Hey guys, today I thought I'd talk a little bit about Homecoming and what we know is going to be probably in the game come the 23rd of October. Now, bear in mind, these are just my opinions on stuff. You might disagree, when the game comes out, or if you've already had a chance to see what I'm talking about, then you might think the complete opposite to me, in terms of what I like or even what I don't like. So just keep that in mind. My what I think does not, necessarily it's not the objective truth. Um, but yeah, just some impressions from me, things I do and don't like. So let's start with the good stuff that's going to be happening with Homecoming. So right off the bat, you've got all these new improved graphics that we've been able to see showcased both with Scoia'tael faction, the Monster faction, and in the Homecoming, Thronebreaker gameplay as well. And yeah, I would say all the art and all the new art for cards, all the character models and animations for those characters are really nice. The game board looks good, um, and the card size is nice as well. I'd say all of that is a positive. Aesthetically, the game looks, yeah, it looks, I would say probably better. I'm not really too fussed about what the game looks like. Like I tend to, enjoy a game or play a game a lot more based on the mechanics and the gameplay and whatnot, rather than aesthetics. But it's worth keeping in mind that that stuff does look good. One thing I would say is some of the card animations feel a bit floaty. Not quite the weight or impact that you'd want, and I don't know, the way they hit the board looks a bit weird to me. They might change this, they might be working on that, um, the coming weeks before it actually arrives. So that complaint might, no longer be relevant um, when Homecoming actually releases. But that would be a little complaint from me. I don't really like the animations. In current Gwent, some of the animations are looking better than the ones that we've seen from Homecoming. But, plenty of time. I'm sure that's actually probably what a lot of their time is being spent doing right now is getting those animations in and the sound effects and all that stuff and making it look really good and impactful. So yeah, that's kind of a good point and a little counterpoint to that. What else is good? I think the provision system is really cool. Um, yeah, like it allows for a lot of diversity in deck building, and you're a lot more flexible now that you're not limited to 4 golds, 6 silvers, or whatever. You can effectively play, I don't know, not any amount of that, a silver card or a gold card, but you can play a lot more, and you're a lot more flexible with how you build your deck in terms of bronzes, golds, and effectively silvers, although they've now been changed to golds as well. So that's a positive change, I think, and will, uh, you know, be good going forward. There is, again, a counterpoint to that, which is balancing around provisions is a bit of a weird concept unless both players are guaranteed their whole decks in games. And the reason for that is simply if you're balancing around provisions, that means higher provision cards are necessarily going to be stronger than lower provision cards, right? Um, and that means if you draw into your stronger provision cards, your higher provision cards, and therefore stronger cards, and your opponent doesn't, then you're obviously going to be at a significant advantage, right? So there's a potential for more variance, a higher luck factor, being a result of the provision system, and or more specifically balancing using the provision cost rather than the effect of the card. I think whatever, it's like the same difference, right? Either way, I don't know. It ends up being probably the games are more decided by how well you draw, um, due to the cost of the card being uh, shown outside of the game itself rather than the deck building. However, if you're gaining access to your whole deck, then this is less of a problem, right? Um, so that's kind of, another thing that I like, and then a little counterpoint to that. We'll see. I think so. If there's a lot of thinning in the game, um, which I'm not sure there will be, uh, I actually don't know if there is right now, and if they're planning to put more in. I do know that they've been fiddling around with the number of cards in deck, and of course you've got 2 bronzes in deck, I believe, right now, 2 maximum bronzes, rather than 3 as we had in the past. So let me just pull it back and share some thoughts on all that stuff. So, um, effectively, what we're saying is if there's less consistency, that combined with the provision system is going to mean more variance, right? More luck involved, and maybe less strategy, I guess you could say. Right now in Gwent, there are some issues with like drawing gold cards and your opponent not getting them, although it's not too big of an issue because most decks are able to thin a lot and get access to those gold cards or have ways to tutor their important cards, like getting your spy out or whatever with Heim or Rainfarn, or I don't know, playing your crack into your greatsword so you get that more reliably, whatever it may be. So yeah, in current Gwent, it's not too much of an issue. If there's less consistency, that might be a problem. Okay, so what else do we know? We know there's going to be a different mulligan system, so there's more mulligans available across the game, and these you can use them all in one round if you want, or you can use them spread across multiple rounds. Um, Now, honestly, I don't really like this system. This is one of my issues. If it is around when Homecoming drops, because effectively mulligans are then acting as kind of a form of carryover if you don't use them right. If you say use all your mulligans in round one, then you're not able to use them later in the game, and that means your opponent's going to have an advantage if they haven't used their mulligans. And so effectively, the player with the better hand at the start of the game also has a carryover advantage, right? Because they're able to hold on to their mulligans for later in the game. The player with a weaker hand either has to bite the bullet in round one or they have to use their mulligans. Either way, they're either at disadvantage round one or they have to be a disadvantage later in the game. So basically, that increases hand variance. So the better hand gets an even better advantage, right? So not only do you draw well, but you also then gain an advantage later on in the game or early in the game. So that I'm not a huge fan of, that mulligan system. I think that's adding just a little bit of kind of variance again, like a luck factor and a draw factor. So if you're drawing well at the beginning of the match, you're in an even bigger advantage than you would be in current Gwent. Current Gwent, the mulligans are used to balance out the hands. If you have a really good hand and a pretty bad hand, at least the pretty bad hand can get to sort of a middle level, right? While the good hand will not get any better. But with the new system, the good hand gets to keep those mulligans for later in the game, right? Do you see what I'm saying? That's kind of crazy. Whereas the bad hand, either it's really bad or you bring it up to here, but then you'll weaken in later on. So yeah, I don't like the mulligan system. I think that's not a good thing. And just yeah, either having it the way it is right now or not allowing you to use the mulligans later on, or having a consistent amount of mulligans through the game. It's kind of the only way to do it unless you want to increase the variance there. So that's another thing I don't like. So we've been told dry passing is no longer going to be a thing. I don't want to go too in depth on this topic because honestly, I'm not even sure how much it has been shared to the public about sort of the systems that are now in the game. I don't really want to go into detail about all that stuff, but basically, I have a few issues with some of these systems. The first is no more dry passing. I don't like that. I think dry passing is a tactical option that you should be able to have. There's a lot of thinking that goes into whether your deck can dry pass against any other deck, and I think that takes away a real competitive aspect from the high level gameplay really, of whether or not you can make this play early on that will impact the whole of the game and how you play the whole game, and round two will become that kind of round one important round, and it's going to influence a lot of things in round three as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of being able to dry pass should you want to. Um, I imagine maybe there would be ways to allow you to dry pass, but have a greater penalty to that. Right now, there is a coin flip solution in place, which I'm not sure they've talked about. So there is incentive to play into round one as the blue player. I feel like dry pass would still be popular if it was in Homecoming. But it's a tactical option. It's not a necessity, especially if you have this coin flip fix. That kind of is going to help to negate the whole benefit of dry passing, right? You would hope. So I'm not really sure. There seems to be a disconnect there. You've taken out dry passing. I guess they really want to put an importance on every round. But funnily enough, taking out the ability to dry pass kind of actually, and the way they've implemented that you know, not being possible, uh, kind of leads to the game feeling like you don't really care about round two, and to an extent, you don't really care about round one. I I can't really go in, like I don't really want to go in depth on why this is the case. People have given similar feedback, and like this has been, told to CDPR. I don't think it's going to change at this point, but who knows? Um, but really, the main takeaway here is I have a few issues with lack of dry passing and lack of meaning of the rounds now. It doesn't really feel like Gwent does at the moment, where you're rewarded for like bleeding your opponent, or for pushing round two, or for taking a pass early in round one, or all these things. It just seems like the passing and that whole aspect of the game, like passing and bleeding, seems to be a lot less important. And also card advantage as a whole. We've seen them remove Silver Spies, right? There's not really opportunities to gain card advantage now that there used to be uh, in Gwent, and that's kind of not a thing I'm a fan of. I actually think that's one of the ways that Gwent has been able to sort of make the gameplay more complex by putting on a value on having extra cards over your opponent. It's not just about the amount of points you have, right? It's also about how you manage the points to then maybe get some kind of carryover, because that's effectively what card advantage is, right? It's having the ability to later in the game play an extra card, or later in the game have more points in that key round. So yeah, basically, I don't like the removal of dry passing. I don't like the removal of bleeding. I don't like the removal of feasible ways to push for card advantage, whether it be tempo, spies, or dry passing. So I feel like all of that just reduces the complexity of the game and makes it feel like a different game and not Gwent, to be honest. So that's kind of the main issue I have with Homecoming Gwent right now, is all of that stuff. There are, we've talked about the issues with provisions and the Mulligan as well. There are a few issues there. I don't know if they're as great as the whole dry passing card advantage bleeding issue that I have. What else? There is a few other good things I wanted to talk about. So I am quite a big fan of a lot of the card design for the new cards. People have complained that it's a lot of damage and boost effects. Yes, but that's kind of all you have to work with in Gwent, right? When there's no mana. You have sort of tutoring, you have damage, you have destruction abilities, and you have boosting. And of course, there's going to be more stuff like being able to destroy your own unit or whatever, destroy an opponent's unit, right? Like there's a few other effects, and yeah, damage and boost is the most common ones in the new game, it seems, but I don't think that's a bad thing. The implementation of these effects is quite interesting. There's a lot of synergies going on. And yeah, in general, the sort of moment-to-moment gameplay does feel like you have to think a lot and really sequence properly to get the full value from each of your cards, which is quite cool. And the game certainly feels less sort of brain dead, quote unquote, in your sort of moment-to-moment plays than it does in current Gwent, I guess. That might just be because I haven't played a huge amount of Homecoming, like I don't know if after, a few months of that it will become brain dead, quote unquote, as it currently feels like it is, I guess, to some people. But yeah, I would say the card design in general looks promising, looks good from what we've seen, and yeah, I hope that that is something that makes the game interesting to everybody, not just high-level players, but also the casuals. So yeah, that's a positive to take away. I felt like I should end on a positive. There are some major grievances I have with the game, which I don't think are going to be addressed. But it's also important to note that I'm probably one of the few people who will have issues with those things. I think in general, a lot of people aren't fans of decks being too consistent in Gwent, which they, arguably currently are. I know especially a lot of more casual players are not fans of decks being able to guarantee their win con every game. Maybe they want their janky deck to have a chance, if it draws better than the opponents or whatever. Um, yeah. So basically, what I'm saying is, you feel free to disagree with the things I've said, like in terms of if you think it's a bad thing or a good thing. It's pretty much just a subjective opinion that I have, and while I'd hope that some of that stuff would change or be fixed, probably won't. I'm just gonna have to deal with it. That's the direction that CDPR have chosen to go in, so that's what we're gonna get. But yeah, I feel like this video needed to be made at some point because a lot of people have been asking for my opinions on Homecoming, and yeah, I just felt like I should formalize it into a video so that I don't get misquoted or yeah, so that everyone knows what the deal is with my thoughts. But yeah, once again, doesn't mean Homecoming won't be great. I'm sure I will enjoy it. I'm sure you will enjoy it. And yeah, have a fun time gwenting, and hopefully we won't have to wait for too much longer. 3 weeks-ish, less than 3 weeks. That's not too bad. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say, I guess. So thanks a lot for watching, guys. Yeah, I can't wait to do like more deck guides and stuff when Homecoming comes out. That'll be pretty interesting. Although learning the game is going to be quite hard. I know that for sure. Anyway, yeah, thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.